Welcome everybody back to the trial name of Best Trader I Know for Brotato Capital. My name is Swiss. The date is the 10th of February 2025. Super Bowl Sunday, but Monday here in Australia. Today I'll be interviewing Smoothie, who has been able to get some free time in Australia's most popular asylum, Canberra, to join us tonight to be able to have a chat about his crypto journey, about himself, and get his views on a few things. So, yeah, welcome, Smoothie. What's going on?
Thank you, brother. Yeah, they took the straight jacket off me for this one, so it's a lucky slot, this one.
Nice.
Good to be here.
Nice, man.
Nice to be here, bro. Thanks for having me on.
No, that's all good, man. Have you got any background ideas? I was gonna get Canberra and just have like the Parliament background, and then I was gonna, dude, I was
We
gonna
have to
make
do
it.
Parliament House, bro.
Oh, dude, that
I
might
think
be
that's
it.
we've struck gold on the first idea.
Dude, I think that'd be good. I was gonna.
Because you said like the rod thing, so I was gonna say like like a really scenic view from like a fishing boat or something, but I think it's got to be Parliament House. I don't think we can. It's not gonna get better than that. You've nailed it, first go.
Dude, I was gonna say tonight. I was gonna say I wrote it down. I was like, yeah, Smoothie has decided to join us from Australia's most popular asylum. He only gets an internet break every now and then, so we're glad to have him with us. And then the joke would be that you live in Canberra. But I've got a few questions around that as to how you became
Around Canberra.
yeah, like how you became a Canberra bro, if you moved there or if you were born there, and yeah, I was gonna see how that eventuated. So,
Well,
um,
yeah, I mean, contrary to popular belief, the reports you might hear around, I'm not born in Canberra, as much as it pains me to say. So I'm actually a Sydney boy for most of my life. I've only been incarcerated down here for a little over a year now. So it's
incarcerated.
I'm still, yeah, look, it's still relatively new. Asylum, prison, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
So yeah, actually, the missus came down to study in Canberra.
yeah,
Um, and so, naturally I'm going to tag along. So we called it an adventure, but
yeah.
it's kind of, I think adventure is a bit of a grandiose term for, a year in Canberra. So it's been like a year and a half. I feel like we've seen everything that we need to see. So, I'm not here to defend it. We'll say that much.
Fair, fair, man.
That's nice. It's nice though. It's a nice little part of town. It doesn't have the Sydney humidity.
Yeah,
Things are actually affordable. So
yeah.
it's got
I've
its ups
heard
and
that
downs.
as well. Like, it's not terrible. Does that look like Parliament to you? Can you see that on the screen? I'll send it backwards so we can.
Okay, here we go.
It looks like a nice
That,
hue,
that
right? Like
looks
it.
glorious.
Yeah, it looks really nice. So I think this might be the.
I think that's the one, man.
Yeah,
Making Canberra actually looks like slightly exciting. So I think you're working magic.
dude. When I first started this, I felt so sad for Wonel, because he was like having to help me do some of the most basic shit on here. And now that it's working, I'm like too scared to make any errors in case I have to like bring him back on, and he has to
Yeah, so it's
like.
like the stop button. Like, we'll
Yeah.
just leave it at that.
Oh, yeah. And so when the stream started like cutting out, I was like, just as long as it's recording, I'll be happy, you know.
That's all you need. Look, if you're gonna have like a first stream with anyone, you've got one on tech support. I think you've got a good intro.
Yeah. Ah,
I
look at
mean, you've
this.
managed to name it Asylum Background, so clearly, you're getting up there in terms of the skill set.
Yeah. All right. How do we move this around so it looks? Oh, hang on, not the background. How do I do this? Control
That's about
Z.
it.
All right.
You
What
got to
about
talk shit
that?
about Canberra to begin with, but no.
I think that looks all
Yeah,
right.
that's
What do you
beautiful.
reckon? Yeah, I think that looks
Yeah,
good.
we look like two ministers working our way into the house. I reckon that's spot on.
I'm glad I'm recording this because I'll get Stinkley to chuck it in as a bit of
That's
banter
it.
at the start. Um, cool.
We
All
look
right,
like the two crypto czars of Australia.
dude. I swear to God, your profile picture is easily one of my favorite. I don't even know how you've been able to
It's
like
amazing, isn't it?
find it. It's just so like goofy.
This was a custom creation.
So you made
Um,
this,
no, I didn't make it. There's I don't know if you know an account called Clarky Crypto,
Clarky. I'm gonna give him a
but
look
he's kind of
now.
like like a bit of a bold style character. Like he's been doing crypto art for like a long time now. Like I think even before Bold, he's just like never sort of yeah, I guess hit the big time like Bold has. But yeah, he used to do like little characters of a lot of well-known like crypto personalities, and he's got I think he even like minted on OpenSea. There's like a crypto one, so he's got like all his drawings that he's done over this. Must be like 100 in there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a little snippet of CT and these sort of designs. So he literally just like he didn't say a word to me, and then just one day I got tagged in this picture, and I was just like, holy shit, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And he was even like DMing me, being like, damn man, this is the best one I've ever done. So I'm truly blessed to be rocking a Clarky crypto. Shout out to the man.
Nice. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I feel like to start things off, I'll talk about a wholesome story that happened between you and I. So, for the context and the audience, I've never met Smoothie in real life yet. Unfortunately, I think it'd be coming up on 12 months ago, right? Smoothie
Yeah,
was
yeah.
unfortunately hacked, and I think I was claiming a free airdrop for BTC somewhere, so I had some BTC. So I asked and asked and asked for Smoothie to send through a BTC address so I could send him some Bitcoin to kind of help him out. After a hack, obviously it was nowhere near what he had lost from his hard work within Solana, and basically,
Yeah, the shitcoin wallet.
yeah, the shitcoin wallet. And then basically, fast forward months later, I ended up getting hacked, and Smoothie pestered me a couple of times, and then he decided to be a very generous bloke to send back the BTC that I had already sent him. So that was a very wholesome thing that occurred. Something that I'm like super proud of and makes me very bullish on people that I meet in the space because of that generosity and willingness to help out. I always thought it was good that I would send him BTC and not Solana, just in case he couldn't be bothered to either convert it into anything or transfer it anywhere or lose it on some more shit coins. So
Yeah,
maybe
that was a
that,
wise decision, not gonna lie.
yeah, I
It
was.
stayed BTC for a long time.
That was good. Yeah, I was I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't really want to refund the wallet that got hacked again with some USDC or
It
Solana,
was
you
too
know.
soon for me to look at Solana again, to be honest with you. I needed
Yeah,
some time away.
yeah. And we'll talk about that more, obviously, to how it happened, how you felt about it, and how you bounced back. But we'll start with the obvious one, which is how did you first hear about crypto and what made you get involved?
Yeah, so I mean, like I'm well and truly a crypto boomer these days. I feel like this cycle kind of refers to like the 2017 era as like OGs. Back then we were sort of like, the 20 like sort of 12ers, 2013ers
Yeah,
were kind of like the OG crew. So I've been around a long, long time. I've round tripped many, many bags. So it was actually a friend of mine. So like as these things usually happen, it's like kind of like your nerdiest mate
yeah,
sort of finds out about it. Like they're either like, massively into like Silk Road and drugs or something, or they're
yeah.
just like a complete like, computer guy. Um, so yeah, he kind of like became like massively crypto pilled on it.
Mm.
Um, and like to his credit, like he was like a massive evangelist for it. Like he just basically within like a few weeks of learning about it, set up like a crypto chat of like basically like anyone he'd met in the last like year. So we had like this group of like 100 people, about three of which had any interest in crypto whatsoever.
Good
So
conversion rate.
it, yeah, it was just like basically like shouting into the void for like weeks and weeks and weeks, and like people were like probably mostly feigning interest. And then, like a few of us just slowly got ground down by it. So I kind of like went through that, early stages where I'm like, oh yeah, but like like how could it disrupt the banking system, right? Like
Yeah,
like if it's all that, then like why wouldn't the banks sort of like get into it? And I guess it was kind of like learning more about like, well, this is kind of like, actually disrupting the banks, and because like basically all I'd heard about it before that was like sort of traditional finance being like, oh, it's nothing, it's not going to be anything. So
Yeah.
that was kind of like my first knowledge of anything to do with it. So like, yeah, it took a little while to sort of like get over that, and um, yeah, I guess he just sort of like walked at me for long enough that I, you know, started to understand like a little bit why it could be, a big thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, I can't really remember now. I mean, it's like fucking 8 years ago, so I can't remember like what actually got me to buy some. But I think I bought some like Bitcoin or like BTC markets, like way, way back in the day.
Yeah.
Um, and then it was like the old school altcoins of like, I don't know if you know Verge, like XVG.
I've heard about it, but probably through um, older people from the previous cycle, but I've not heard about it since.
Yeah, yeah, it's completely dropped off. So yeah, that was kind of like my first big win in crypto. Was it like literally the investment thesis was these guys have a new website, um, and like it sounds insane to say like that's why you invested in it, but it ended up ripping like a 16x. Like there was just like so little going on in like the altcoin space that like a new website was genuinely like one of the big events that one of these tiny coins could have.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think they even had like I think it topped on like, it was like Pornhub payment system rumors, which is just like absolutely insane. There was like news came out like it was being like confirmed, as
Uh,
far as like crypto news is confirmed. And then obviously I don't think anything ever happened with it, but yeah, I think it was just like kind of like buying shit coins, and it was kind of like the ICO era. So,
yeah.
no, it was the ICO era. So you need a coin for everything. You need like a coin for your postage system. You need a coin for like dentists. Um, so yeah, I was basically like, I mean, I was also in this like Facebook group. That's kind of like was my early days. I don't know if you've ever heard of Nuggets News,
Yes. Yeah.
which is like, yeah, that was. So I don't know if you know the whole story about like the guy that founded it. Alex
Uh,
Saunders. Do you ever hear much about him?
yeah. So I did hear the story from a close friend who worked with him about how unfortunately it sort of unraveled towards the end of the previous cycle.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, would be keen to get your perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, like I was kind of in that group for a while just because, like, I had no idea where to start in crypto. My
Yeah.
mate obviously heard about it from somewhere, so he sort of like jumped in, just invited me, and that was kind of like my very early exposure to crypto. And he was kind of like it was kind of like a bit of a, it's like a group where they basically kind of got like ICO allocation through them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of it. So yeah, they sort of like it was kind of meant to be like an educational thing, and like the
Mm.
educational content was yeah, like pretty good and everything.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, I mean I kind of participated in a few of the ICOs. Didn't go particularly well. I think I ended up leaving the group before like, the big fallout happened,
Yeah.
to be honest. But yeah, from what I heard, like it didn't really seem like there was much, sort of like room for interpretation around it. Like the people um, I met, I actually think we probably have a mutual that I met at one of the events from way back in the day. I think I
Mm.
know who you're referring to. But
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I don't know. It just sounded like, I don't know if it was just kind of like the status or like whatever got to him, but um, yeah, he just sort of like dropped off the face of the earth next I heard, and yeah, he seems to have. I noticed he came back like not long ago. I'm sort of not really in the loop anymore, but yeah, it was kind of a crazy way to kick things off.
Yeah, it's the evolution of success. Maybe, you reach a certain point where everything's moving so quickly, then things sort of get missed and things start to slip and fall, and things unravel on the downside, just as crypto does. So I just
Yeah,
had
it
a,
does.
a good question to ask, to jump in there. You said that around that period of time where your nerdy friend was like adding you to those groups and like spamming heaps of people because he thought he found the next Jesus. Um, what were you doing at the time that sort of bred that skepticism, do you think, like before you started to really get into crypto?
I think I'm just a natural skeptic, to be honest. I
Yeah,
mean, like, sort of, I guess that's kind of just like being, yeah, I don't know, wary of new things or, things you don't necessarily understand yet.
yeah,
I mean, that's just kind of like, I feel like just the way I am with like a lot of things in general. It's just kind of like I take it from an approach of like, I don't necessarily like trust this to begin with, and it's kind of like the onus of proof is basically like on crypto or like my friend in this time. Not that it was his job or anything, but it was he was trying to get us all into it. So it was basically just like I needed persuading to come around to the point where you know and it was kind of like, it's an education thing as well. Like when you don't know things and like banks, when you're young, you kind of think like, oh, they're not like, you're sort of brought up not necessarily distrusting banks as much.
yeah,
You sort of get into crypto and you kind of, like, I think it's only really since crypto and sort of learning more about what it is and the sort of relationship with the banks and, like banks, debanking crypto companies and that sort of thing that you sort of actually understand. Yeah, I don't know. You see that like the world for what it really is, I guess.
yeah. I think I like the point that you touched on where you said you don't really distrust the banks to begin with, which I think is like a really interesting point because a lot of people that aren't in crypto probably have a foundational trust and respect for a lot of these institutions.
Yeah.
And that might be like the base for why they wouldn't want to really participate in this industry.
Yeah,
Um,
and it feels like that's why XRP is like so successful. It's almost like a gateway drug to like, your regular person, right? It's kind of like, right, it's not like, it's kind of like the coin where you can trust banks, but also crypto at the same time, because it's kind of meant to be like the blockchain payment solution for banks in a way.
I've never thought of it like that, but that actually clicks with me. I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, yeah, that's probably
That's
what.
just a thought that popped in my head. I've never thought about that in my life, but it
No,
kind
that's.
of like, I wonder if that's part of it actually.
I think that's really good though, because I think it does serve as the gateway drug. Because if people
Yeah, yeah.
believe that it's going to take over the banks, it's like they kind of need to be told that by
Yeah, like
authority.
people don't want like a complete collapse of like the banking system, right? Like it's kind of
Yeah,
scary to be like, this is going to disrupt the banks. They're going to become obsolete. Like your fiat everyday money that everyone's been saving for. Like no one really wants to believe that that's all going to come crumbling down because some anonymous, potentially Japanese guy created an orange coin that you can't touch or hold or see or anything. I mean, like it's much more palatable to people to be like, no, this is working with you guys. Like we're not going to tear the building down.
that might actually be like the key as to why XRP is so successful, and I've never thought of it from that perspective. Because you're
Saying it
right.
out loud now, I'm like angry at myself for not owning any, which is like the way these things go. Eh?
Yeah, it's so true. When people sort of go, "Oh yeah, I don't know who created Bitcoin. It sounds a bit scary and sus, and it's not really backed by anything." And then all of a sudden, XRP is like nicely packaged in this digestible
The
like
cool
format
logo.
of dialogue, which is like, "Oh yeah, it's going to be the payment rails that takes over the bank," and that's like enough for people to go, "Oh, this is it. This is this is what I've been looking for to invest my life
What? Yeah.
savings into." Yeah.
It's not like that Dogecoin, It's like I can, this is like a serious investment. This is like stocks, right? This is like the new age of stocks.
Yeah, the more we talk about this, the more that I hate myself for not owning any when it decided to rip to new all-time
It's like the
highs.
classic hated rally, eh? It's
Yeah,
like it's kind of almost like a no-brainer in some ways, but you can understand why people faded it because like all the old coins have pretty much, spiraled to zero. But like after enough pumps, you can sort of it's kind of on us for not being like, of course, XRP is going to have a pump this cycle. It pumps every cycle. Like I saw someone on crypto Twitter saying, like their normie friend was like, I bought Ripple because it, it pumps every cycle. And then here we are, we're like, oh shit, it fucking pumped this cycle. That's insane.
Yeah, that's when you start getting out traded by the boomers and the newbies. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not a good
legit.
feeling, that's for sure.
No, no.
Speaking of cycles, so was it the 2012, 2013 when you decided to start buying around, or was that when you were buying
No,
volume
no.
for? Yeah,
I wasn't until much later. So I think I sort of probably started dabbling like late 2017. I think like my earliest buys were, yeah, 2017.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so yeah, I mean, like I was kind of, I think I'd only like recently probably had like my first, real job, to be honest.
yeah.
So I just had like it was just me and my blockfolio on like my iPhone 4 or whatever it was back then. Um, so yeah, I think like I must have had some Bitcoin, but I remember specifically like buying Bitcoin and never being able to hold it. It would just always turn itself into alts, as I'm sure like most of like CT can probably relate to.
Yeah,
Um, I think it was like one of those. I think I had like a disgusting like altcoin portfolio of like 30 coins. So I had like, probably like $100 in like a couple and like $20 to $50 in the rest of them, which is just like, it's just like insane to look back on. I wish I had like more screenshots of my old portfolios, but
yeah,
yeah. And then I was just kind of like, yeah, like learning about diversification and like over diversification and that sort of thing. So
yeah.
yeah, it was sort of like the Neo era. I don't know if you probably remember Neo.
I
Um,
remember
so
Neo, but I don't remember Neo being a thing, you know?
right,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Because it was kind of like it was like Ant shares turned into Neo. So I sort of came after that whole rebrand thing. But yeah, Neo was huge. And like their gas token as well.
yeah, that's
Um,
that's like foreign language to me. I really did not
Mate,
experiment
that
with
was the
Neo.
golden era. I'm sad you weren't there. It was fun times, man.
So when you started learning about diversification and kind of really ascertaining what you were buying and what you were selling, did that come in the bear market of 2018, would you say?
Um, that's a good question. Um, I mean, it was kind of like a process, I guess. It was because I think, yeah, like so, like the Facebook group was kind of like my crypto Twitter of the day back then. So it's just
Yeah,
like a bunch of people who were like, punching shit coins and
the Nuggets
giving their
news one.
opinions of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So that was kind of like, obviously just like challenges like your beliefs or the way you think things, and then like when you see it playing out in real time, like if you've got like a one of your 30 shit coins hits like a 10x, but you've got like $30 in it or something, you're kind of
yeah,
like, well shit, like what am I doing with dust in all these coins? Like I need to like consolidate, try and do a bit more research, whittle them down, not just buy like everything you see on the internet, and just try and like figure out like what actually makes more sense than others. And yeah, just trying to like, it was kind of like, yeah, the very early stages of learning like portfolio management, allocation, your weightings in your different holdings. And yeah, basically like trying to make sure that you've got a small group of like coins that you think are actually good, without the risk of like one of them just having like the bottom fall out and you're basically completely zeroed. So
yeah.
yeah, very very early days.
Did you have any like when you were talking about buying things that were like, a couple of Xing and things like that and being in the Facebook group, were you buying things with like long-term investment thesis on them?
I, I mean, yeah, I think so a little bit. Um, yeah, I mean, like I'm trying to think of. I mean, there were some that obviously were just always going to be short-term plays. I'm struggling to remember the name of it now, but there was like one which was like the thesis was it was kind of like tracking chips on like postage, like the postal service. And then the
No
tracking
way.
chips would basically like feed back onto this blockchain, right? And the token would be needed for like Oz posts basically. to like use this as like a tracking system, right? So that was actually quite a big thing back in the day. Was like supply chain, um, I
Management
guess
sort of
like
thing.
utility, yeah, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Um, so I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, that sounds like something that I think back in the day I probably thought that was a long-term thesis. I mean, like something that's going to like disrupt the postal service. I mean, it sounds like kind of insane to say now because we've been through so many cycles of like altcoins that haven't lived up to the hype. But like back then when like altcoins were, you know, like relatively like new and up and coming, that was like a very like believable narrative to cling on to. Like you just think of like the postal service, and you think like, you know, your immature brain goes like, oh, you know, literally every country in the world has a postal service. Like this is gonna, you know, go to trillions of dollars, kind of thing.
Y-
Um,
yeah. It's interesting that people were getting excited over um, tracking chips for the Australian Postal Service that would get posted to the blockchain.
it's insane. I think
As
it was based in like Switzerland, but I was just sort of like Aussiefying it. But yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's hard to imagine. Like looking back on how some of your thought processes go through, it's just like a crazy thought exercise.
yeah. Um, how is the 2021 cycle in comparison to the 2017 cycle? So what was there anything that you kind of expected to happen, and were there lots of things or a few things that you didn't expect to happen in that comparison?
I think 2021. What were some of the big coins of that era? Um, I'm just trying to pull up some charts on my side screen. Yeah, so that was kind of like the birth of Solana era. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean 2021 was kind of a weird one for me because that was kind of like the cycle for me where me and my IRL mates, who the two that survived from that massive group of 100, were into crypto, and we all decided it was a really smart and good idea to get into leverage trading um,
Nice.
without any real experience trading like whatsoever. Like we're just a few dudes who like bought some coins and just like hope they'd go up. So we decided like, yeah, man, like 3x cross margin leverage. That this is the spot for me. This is where I'm gonna make the big bucks. So yeah, I mean, it's I think it was I can't remember exactly when. Let's see. Yeah, basically I got that cycle I got like liquidated for basically like all of my holdings.
No.
And that was on my birthday.
No.
So yeah, like, you know, I mean this is kind of like this the classic stereotype, right? Of like, you know, it takes your first cycle to I feel like pretty much everyone that's made it has like lost it all at least like a couple of times.
Yeah.
So I'm basically like paying my tuition fee here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got like zeroed out. I did actually keep leverage trading a little bit, so it was kind of like I actually traded Solana a little bit. That was kind of like the first time since it happened, which I actually had some success trading leverage. So um, yeah, I was long Solana back at you can see the little condensed area from like May to July where it was like 30, you know, 25, $30.
Yeah, in
So
2021.
that's yeah, I had
Yeah.
a bit of fun doing that. I frankly can't remember like a lot of the other stuff I was trading around that time. I think it was pretty much just yeah, Solana was the big one. I had for quite a long time like a CBDC related token. It was called Quant. So there was like a bunch of guys that I knew through like, you know, friends of friends
Yeah.
in an online chat that found it at like $1. Um, so yeah, I was like relatively inactive. I mean, apart from like a little bit of like leverage trading, I basically just like bought some of that from like five, and we were just like moon boys. We were just like quant moon boys in our like little Slack chat we had. Um, so
Yeah.
we were all just like convinced this was going to be like, you know, the next top 5 cryptocurrency.
Wow.
And I had a pretty good run. It got to like, $400, and we were all like, the classic, we were all euphoric in the chat, and I was like, no, no, no. This is just like the first stop to $1,000. So yeah, I think I ended up like, quite typically round tripping most of that bag.
Oh,
Like, like we bought early enough that we still came out on top, but yeah, it was pretty much the cycle of round tripping shit for me. I mean, that was kind of like, because art blocks were like 2021-ish, weren't they?
yeah.
Like the whole NFT craze, that was like, yeah, around 2021, maybe 2022. Yeah, 2021.
Yeah, it sort of like peaked, I think, in cyclical sort of nature with the coins, but I think the mass peaking of it was in 2022, I feel.
Yeah.
It's-
So that's kind of just unlocked the memories for me. But yeah, I was like massively into NFTs. That's what I was doing for most of the cycle after that.
Yeah, well, that was going to be
And
my
that's
next
actually where I,
question. Was yeah, like apart from leverage trading and being the moon boys for the quant coin, was if you did experiment with like on chain or NFTs.
yeah. So that was kind of like also my intro into crypto Twitter. Um, so like you've probably never heard of it because it was a tiny, tiny project. It was like Icebergy, and that sort of group. So they had a NFT project called Don't Buy Rope.
Don't buy rope.
So, don't buy rope. Yeah, it's you can sort of connect the dots. It was an anti um you know a never kill yourself kind of
Oh my god.
meme. Yeah, and the logo for the coin was literally just like a rope. So I don't have no idea why I got into that.
Was
Think
that
I
your
just saw it on like
first
crypto
foray?
Twitter.
Like that was your first try at like
I think it was the
NFTs?
first. It might have been the first NFT I ever bought. This was like super, super early on, like before they sort of like completely blew up. So they were literally just like hand drawn, like almost like trading cards for like a few crypto personalities. So they had like Chainlink God was one.
Yeah.
So they had like Icebergy. Um, who else did they have? It'll be really funny for you to like look it up. It's like a crazy look into the NFT thing.
I'm gonna have
But
a look
anyway, they were
now.
basically like making their own NFTs, and this was like super, super early on. NFTs like weren't a very big thing. So I think I had like a handful of ETH, and I literally just like I got like some fame within that group because I'd become like a market maker for their project, right? So I was like I think at one point I was genuinely like a third of the entire volume on the NFT collection. So I was basically like just like plund protection patrol for these NFTs.
Yeah.
So I was just like buying anything that was listed under 1 ETH, and then I'd basically just like relist them at 2 ETH. So I was basically just doing this for weeks, and it was just like working because like the buy and sell pressure was um, like small enough but constant enough that you could actually yeah, run it basically. There was like one point where I bought like back when you could, I mean, you probably still can, but you could like bundle. It was like a bundle of like 15 NFTs, and I think someone did it for like 10 ETH or something.
Yeah.
So I just like bought all those up, and I was just sort of like selling them and rebuying them, and yeah, basically just sort of like market making through there. So it was kind of like yeah, it was like VX Cozy.
Oh yeah,
Base
yeah,
Carbon,
yeah.
Icebergy, those guys. So yeah, I kind of got into their Telegram chat, and they all had crypto Twitter accounts and everything. So that's what got me into it. Um, so yeah, that was very, very early days. That was before they blew up at all, really.
Wow. I think
And
that's
then
hilarious that your first NFT was something called Don't Buy Rope.
that's insane as well. Like, and it actually ended up it was pretty big as well.
Speaking of getting into crypto Twitter, how did the name Smoothie IRL ROG come about?
That is a that's a long a long story. So, so Smoothie is a shortened version of, and I'm just realizing I haven't told. There's probably like cycles worth of people that don't know um, the law that I'm about to tell the pod right now.
Yeah.
But it was basically like Smoothie was a shortened version of Doctor Smooth Brain. I don't know where it came from. It was just like I was just trying to find like a picture that kind of like I don't know looked funny, and it was just
Yeah.
like I think it was Dwayne the Rock Johnson, and someone had just like edited his face to look completely fucked. So that was my initial online persona was just like Doctor Smoothbrain,
Yeah.
and then I don't know, like it just kind of evolved over time. I became like just like old Smoothie was maybe a more palatable version. I think it was also because like I was trying to like do some posts on Twitter, and I think I remember one day someone was like, because I was called Doctor Smoothbrain, and some random account just replied, "Oh, name checks out," and I was just like, "Oh fuck, man, I've got to do something about this, man. Like the branding, this can't last." He just completely roasted me. I got
uh,
absolutely cooked in the replies. So yeah, that turned into Old Smoothie, and then it was Moose, the guy who was like, "I am my penguin, and my penguin is me."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Around the
that
pudgy
meme
penguins.
went
Yeah.
crazy, and yeah, so I just like set my profile picture to a fishing rod,
Yeah.
and the tweet was just like, "I'm my fishing rod, and my fishing rod is me," and it got like, I don't know, like it was my first like hit tweet. It got like 1,000 likes or something,
Nice.
um, and so that's like when my account gained like loads of followers. So I just became like the guy that's a fucking fishing rod, and it was just like that was my first like acceleration into actually having followers, and I thought like, well, shit, now everyone just knows me as like a fishing rod. So I've kind of been stuck as a Genesis Pudgy Rog for the last must be like over 2 years now.
Yeah. I think it's quite funny when I do see your name as Smoothie IRL Rog. Um, did you want to talk on how your PFP ended up being a similar version to that old, what was it, old Microsoft paperclip um,
Oh
image? Do you know
yeah,
the one I'm talking about? That,
I do.
yeah,
The Clippy, the Roggy.
Clippy, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah, so that was Clarky Crypto, who he's basically like similar to the very popular Bold that most people would know these days. So he was like one of the early like crypto um, culture cartoonists.
yeah,
So you can look him up on like Twitter. I think it's at Clarky Crypto.
yeah,
So yeah, back in like the NFT days, he was just drawing like a load of big accounts and just doing like his own sort of creative take on their profile pictures and their personalities.
yeah,
So he's done like he must have done like over 100 over the years. Um, so yeah, he did some NFTs, well, just like artworks initially. He ended up like minting a little bit just because like people were asking him to. But so you can see like a big, like almost like a school class photo of a bunch of people from like crypto Twitter from like the last probably like 2, 3 years ago now.
yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like it's like become like a bit of like crypto historian now. So one day, yeah, he just like without saying anything to me, just like sort of I got tagged in a post and he's created my fishing rod and turned it into the Microsoft Clippy. With a little speech bubble out saying I am Roggy, I think it says.
Yeah,
And obviously the art's just like incredible, and like ever since I made it my profile picture, it's just been like the one that stuck with me. So
yeah,
I think it might be it might be hard to replace that one. It just
yeah.
looks too good.
I think the transition from Dr. Smoothbrain to uh, in real life Rog with that image is a tough one to beat. I feel. I don't think you could really top this
It's quite a long
beautiful
road, eh?
artwork. Yeah, yeah.
Not easy to connect those dots.
No, no. I think the fact that the Doctor Smooth Brain has been put to rest. I think it might be the best. You know what I mean? It may not need to ever show its face on the TL again. I feel like
No,
this is the upgrade, which is
this is
awesome.
it. This is it. No.
Back to the 2021 cycle. How did you come across Pudgies and why did you get involved?
Um, I mean, like I was involved because it was like the NFT super cycle, to use
Mm,
the cursed phrase.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, it was kind of like peak, well, pretty close to peak frothiness in NFTs. So it's not like I was particularly like selective with what I was minting. I was minting fucking like anything that I saw on Twitter at that point.
yeah,
Like my wallet is full of like hidden NFTs that will never see the light of day again, and like I've probably already forgotten existed, and it's probably for the best that it stays that way, because we minted some heinous shit back then,
yeah.
um, like just true abominations. So I think it was, I think a lot of people have the same story, but it was like Jeebus tweeted one day, um, like, "Yo, these are really sick." So I missed the mint, which I think like there were so many mints going on that it's like I don't think that many people caught the mint that were sort of like big fans of them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, he just like posted about them, and they were one of the best looking like NFT like 10K PFP collections that were out there by
Mm,
like some margin.
yeah.
Like I think it resonated with a lot of people for the same reason. Like they just saw them and they thought like, okay, these actually like are fun. These like the traits are interesting. They're not like too over the top. They're like you can have them as a profile picture and not want to not want to cringe at how terrible it looks. So yeah, I minted like, oh, not minted. I aped like I think three of them. I think I got like yeah some of the rares.
Oh,
Like
nice.
yeah, like really. I mean, I sold them way too early. I mean, I got some really really rare ones. There was kind of like the Starry Eyes one, and shit. What else did I have? I don't remember if it was like a golden one. It was like a, I think it was might have even been like an ice skin, like one of the super super rare ones
Oh,
that
really?
have been going for like hundreds of ETH since. I think it was an icy. Um, so yeah, I mean, because I didn't have the largest port back then. There was like lots of flashes in the pan that were sort of getting pumped up a lot, and then they'd get
Yeah.
sold off around one ETH. So I think I sold one of my less rares for like an ETH, and then I sold like another one for two ETH, and I just held the last one that I had. And I was like euphoric. I was like, man, three ETH. This is like, I mean, ETH is probably like the same price now that it was back then. So
Yeah.
it was probably like, I don't know, what is that like 10 grand Australian or something?
Yeah.
So yeah, that felt pretty good, man. And then they just sort of never went away. Like I think I had my remaining Pudgy up until like the whole Ethereum scandal. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and when I finally sold it, it was because the rumor going around was that like Beanie Maxi was gonna buy the project.
Oh, and that was
Um,
like peak
yeah,
fear, right? At that period of
exactly.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think I sold my last Pudgy for like a couple of ETH, and they crashed down to I think they got down to like half an ETH. But then obviously the Beanie Maxi thing was FUD, and Luca Nets took over, and I didn't really know who he was, but obviously the rest is history, and I think I rebought um, my Pudgy back for like two ETH.
Yeah.
And then there was some more FUD along the way. I can't remember which it was. I think I ended up selling that a little bit further down. Um, and then yeah, I bought another one for five ETH, and held it all the way up until dead drop season and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of back and forth, a lot of cheating, a lot of rebuying.
Yeah. Um, Stick said that in the previous app that holding Pudgies was one of his best trades because of how much it kind of paid for itself and
Yeah.
went really well. how did you find that? Because you've obviously traded in and out of the Pudgy Penguins. Did you find that to be similar? Like, how was your experience with obviously a lot of the Pudgy airdrops along the way, and like the price appreciation of it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I feel very similarly.
Yeah.
Like it, because the thing was, like, obviously, I feel like it's easier to hold something when you've, like, if you buy, like 3 or 4 of them, or whatever, and you
Mm.
sell a few of them and you've made your profit, I feel
Yeah.
like it becomes like mentally much easier to hold like your last remaining asset,
Yeah.
especially if you like the look of it.
Yeah.
And I was obviously like pretty big in, or pretty big on the whole Pudgy community. Like obviously, um, the fishing rod chose me. But I was always kind of like in the Pudgy community. I felt like I didn't want to sell my big Pudgy, and yeah, it was basically just going to be like yeah, something I was going to keep for a long time, because I think part of it was it had held up. Um, well, obviously, like it wasn't worth like a crazy amount. Like it wasn't going to completely revolutionize my portfolio,
Yeah.
so like there was no real reason to sell it. Um, and then like I think the turning point was like in the bear market when basically nothing was moving.
Mm.
The like all NFT collections were getting absolutely like know, absolutely sent to the Shadow Realm. Everything was just going to zero. And Penguins, I think, like in the early days, like, because it must have been like maybe 2022, 23. So, like, the very early stages of escaping the bear market of like this cycle. So, it was probably like
Yeah.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
And just like the price action of Pudgies was so incredibly strong and such like a stark outlier to everything else that was going on, like not just NFTs that were getting completely obliterated. It was like one of the only things that was like appreciating in value in crypto, full stop. So it was just like seeing that and having like very strong feeling that we were coming out of the bear market that made it like a very easy hold for me to be like, okay, like I know it's just like a picture of a penguin, and NFTs were probably like, a last cycle thing. They're probably like, in terms of the frothiness in NFTs, it's likely to have like permatopped.
Yeah.
Um, but just seeing like the way, yeah, that the assets were reacting, like even as far down as like, the little pudgies and the rogues and stuff, yeah, it became very obvious to me that this was something that you didn't want to sell until like much later on.
Yeah. Which I think is not easy given the landscape of NFTs and how literally 99% of everything kind of went to zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any other sort of NFT investment thesis, or were you kind of pretty happy with the fact that you were just willing to hold the pudgies and call it a day on that?
Um, like NFT thesis outside of Pudgies, or like with the Pudgies specifically?
Outside of pudgies.
Um, yeah, I mean, like I guess to an extent, I bought into the whole, like we're tokenizing art kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and when like, is it like Christie's? I think even Sotheby's had a go, and they were starting to like auction off NFTs. Um, like a respected, auction houses, respected art houses.
Yeah.
Um, so that was kind of like it felt almost like a fulfilling of the most bullish thesis that people had for NFTs. Um, and that's why I got like really into art blocks, is because I thought that was like the most like legit crypto native, crypto born, like serious sort of like artwork
Yeah.
collection, which obviously died off of a number of reasons. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was kind of like, yeah, like super bullish on NFTs for that reason. And then I basically eventually, like it was kind of one of those massive blow off candles where I was looking at my art blocks, and like it was like I think, I don't know if it was like not long after OpenSea brought in like the US dollar value thing. So I think it like
Yeah.
maybe back in the day, maybe I'm getting this wrong, but they used to just have like the Ethereum amount. So it would just have like, 10 ETH. And at some point, I think they brought in like the US dollar equivalent value. And
Yeah.
I remember I just had like this one day where I was looking at my, the listings and stuff like that. And I was looking at this thing and being like 50,000 like US dollars. Like this is like you can like this is like real respected like traditional art that the entire world collects. You can, buy like some extremely well respected pieces from like some of the most renowned artists for this amount of money. And that was kind of like the turning point for me where I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, if you're ever going to sell, it's going to be now. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then yeah, that was my adventure of selling art blocks at basically the Pico top, and then like wavering in the feelings that I had earlier because I was probably just like addicted to collecting and probably not like, respecting the value of money as much as I should. And then aping the first leg down before they had like the roller coaster image cycle
Oh, the
rapidly to
euthanasia roller
zero.
coaster.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
euthanasia cycle, that's the one.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so I made a shitload of money on art blocks, all to probably be almost entirely negated. Yeah, aping shit on the way down, but
It's always like that
that's
confidence you get
touch of the
of
game.
like, yeah, it's always like that confidence you get where you're like, yeah, I've sold the top, but watch this, I'll trade the bounce or I'll buy back in and then ride it higher, and then yeah, getting the timing and positioning and all that wrong as price moves against you is not always fun. Um, what was the bear market like for you before we had what we have now? What was that like?
I guess it was just like a lot of pain holding, to be honest. I mean,
Mm,
it like yes, because it's like we had that insane double top. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, I don't know. I just like in previous cycles, I'd never really learned the art of selling. It was kind of like, I was just like sort of holding on for dear life, and I kind of like had those, you know, I had a feeling at various points that it wasn't looking good. You should probably sell out and take some profit and that sort of thing. But I think I just like sort of fell into the trap of like, oh no, these are like these are long-term holds. Like,
yeah,
I'd heard stories of like, really big investors who'd like, there was one of Kobe's mates that he would tell the story about, like, I think it was like
Loma Shark.
Lama Shock.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the guy.
yeah,
And he was just saying like, this guy's just like a giga chad. He's just like bought a bunch of stuff 10 years ago and he hasn't sold a single token and he's, up billions of dollars. Um, and I think, I don't know, I guess it was kind of like those sort of stories in my head. I was kind of like, um, I don't know, you just get caught up in the hype and you think, these are multi-cycle assets that I, thought I
mm,
held. But, when, everyone's got a plan until they take a 90% drawdown. And yeah, it was kind of like, I mean, the first two cycles for me is like, massive, massive peaks and then round tripping a lot of it. But still at the end of the cycle, like coming up a lot stronger than I'd ever started. So
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I guess in a way, like the holding thesis, you know, proved somewhat effective.
yeah.
And then, like, yeah, I guess it was just kind of like that bear market, and the current cycle is trying to build on what I learned. And um, yeah, because I guess like another big learning for me was I was holding bags that were like underperforming quite a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and I just kind of thought like in my head, my cope was like, oh, I don't really care if I'm not catching like the fastest horse because it's still going up significantly in like US dollar value and that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like each cycle is just trying to like add a string to your bow, and this cycle I've been a lot better at picking like the fastest horse and appreciating how much of a massive impact picking the outperforming token can have on your portfolio. Not making the same mistakes as previous cycles. Whether you call that like bear market PTSD, which is probably true to some extent after seeing all the meme coins that I sold way too early. And basically, yeah, just trying to like, improve every cycle. Um, yeah, just basically, yeah, just trying to get better each time around.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about the playing the fastest horse. Like, do you have any examples where you kind of had to adjust from your old mentality of the previous cycle to then go, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that again, and I'm going to do this, and that's caused you to then bid some of the fastest horses of this cycle?
Yeah, so like quant token, I mean, at various points in the cycle, most of what I held had like periods of like, minor or minor to major underperformance.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess it was kind of like just sort of like the years of staring at charts slowly, like sort of bearing fruit. Like, I'm not necessarily like the most knowledgeable trader you'll talk to. There's guys in our chat, like Dojo and Co, who are, like respect very highly because they've just got like, such a great knowledge of the space.
yeah,
You've got like guys on CT that you see who are just like insane leverage traders. A lot of them like come over from stocks, having like success over there, taking like what their skills over there and bringing them to crypto and just like knocking it out the park. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, I guess like my edge is kind of having just like been in the game for so long and looking at so many charts that have like had their massive peaks into their massive troughs and seeing what survives and seeing what doesn't survive. So yeah, I mean, I came into this cycle like very ETH heavy,
yeah,
as I think like most people probably were, and a sizable portion probably still are. Um, and instead of just like doing what I'd done in previous cycles, where I just kind of like, I'm just going to buy these bags, believe in these bags, and I'm just going to ride them, for better or worse. I, it was kind of like when Solana was coming out of its, big slumber. I was probably like rave dancing on it when it was back at like $8. And basically just like, it was kind of seeing how like Bitcoin and Solana were running and Ethereum wasn't doing anything, and learning that like sometimes the price action is kind of like not the only thing you need, but if the price is telling you, like if the price of Ethereum isn't going anywhere, in some respects that's telling you that your thesis that this should, be going up, or the thesis that this is the bag that you want to own is, to an extent invalid. Like sometimes that's just like a short-term underperformance. Other times it's not, but I don't know. Just like something inside of me, like something, um, you know, primeval was just like told me, it's time to, jump off this ship basically, and ride the wave of the hype, because the price action was basically like telling me, look, I think your thesis in like Ethereum is wrong. And understanding like the thesis for Solana being the coin to buy, and I think like block raise, I think was like a big Solana bull that changed my mind, and Ansem was another one.
yeah,
So he got like a lot of hate early on for like his Solana bull posting,
yeah,
and like I was probably like initially on the same page as a lot of CT, where I was just like laughing and being like, this coin's dead. Like just have a look at the chart. It's like cratered to $8. It's never coming back. And then just sort of like realizing, I think the turning point for me was realizing in myself, like when I'd seen rallies that I hated, like the classic hated rally, and seeing that, and like in the back of my mind, knowing the reasons for this pump are valid. Like the reasons that I'm not buying it right now are like stupid emotional decisions where it's just like I missed, the pico bottom of $8. So I'm just gonna like bury my head in the sand and basically just like be a fodder of this token,
yeah,
um, and just like sort of shaking that off, and like recognizing that sort of disconnect in my own brain and being like, this is what I did last cycle, and like sometimes you just need to, yeah, I guess respect the price action, respect the reasons why the token's going up, and you know why it was so incredibly undervalued about like, FTX being so closely connected with Solana and that being a very like understandable and obvious reason why it went way, way, way lower than it probably should have, logically. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting because I think the fact that you touched on the reasons for not buying were purely emotional. Um, so, in saying that, when did you start to allocate to Solana? Did you sort of see it going up a lot and then just kind of forego any emotional bias that you had in regards to ETH and then kind of just jump on board? Was that how it sort of happened?
Yeah, it felt like I was just like it felt like I was top blasting in a way. I mean, I think like I mean it's become like a massive thing of this cycle. It's just like probably the most successful traders were just the ones that like top blasted the hot new coin, right?
Yeah.
Or like just for like the chart that was up only and just top blast early enough and you're gonna fucking, make it quite successfully. Especially with meme coins, but that's another story. Um, so yeah, I certainly wasn't like I mean, I was obviously early to it now, but like when I was buying in, I felt like very, very late.
Mm.
Um, because there were like people who had been posting on the TL, not necessarily like $8, but it started to gain some popularity around like that $20 mark. Like you can see it on the
Yeah.
chart, it starts like, breaking its bearish structure. And there were some sharp traders. I think like Trader Main was one of the first I saw starting to post like, oh, if it breaks this level, this is going to start looking very interesting. And I was still like in my probably like emotional state of being like, oh, like, laughing and grave dancing on this coin that had gone from whatever it was, like $300 almost down to $8. Because it's hard for people to imagine, you know, that a coin that's been wrecked that hard can actually resurrect it. I mean, I had a hard time understanding it. And there was like, I think it was like Moon. Oh, I can't remember his full handle, but Moon was like a big Solana bull.
Moon
So there are a
Overlord?
few guys. Moon Overlord, yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
He absolutely crushed the Solana trade. He must have been in from so early. Um, so yeah, I think I sort of bought my first bag in like the high 30s, 40s ish.
Yeah.
I didn't allocate massively, and then I was sort of trading it a little bit. So I managed to sell like the first peak um, of that sort of zone. I'm just trying to find that on a chart. Um, what would it have been? Yeah, so that first run up until like $67, I think. Then I sold my bag around there,
Yeah.
and then it obviously had like a little pullback down to 50, and that's when I sort of like, yeah, I bought in with size because I guess it was kind of like another skill I'd tried to sort of learn a bit more in the bear market was, a bit of TA. Yeah, I guess we can talk a little bit more about TA
Yeah.
later on, but it was like basically like the only TA that I really sort of believe in or what works for me. I mean, there's obviously like lots of different technical analysis that works for different people. Mine is just basically plotting areas of support and resistance, which sounds extremely basic, but a lot of people you do see get it quite wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically like there was some resistance around like $48, $50 from way back in like 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that pull around there and having like a strong reaction to that around that mark. And that just gave me like a lot of confidence that like, damn, okay, like this has obviously been like a huge run from $8 to 50, but you can sort of understand why it could go so much further.
Yeah.
And like another Aussie boy who's been like a big Solana bull, Petrify,
Mm.
was basically just like dropping all these charts of like its peak, its massive, like consolidation down in like the 20s, and then just being like, I think he just drew like a big like half pipe, like a big scoop up, and being like, like this is why we're early. Like I can't believe people think we've pumped too hard yet. And it was kind of like, you don't want to copy trade people. Like you need to have conviction in your own ideas and your own thoughts. Obviously, because borrowed conviction, obviously, you're going to end up yeah, selling too early or round tripping or et cetera, et cetera. But it was
Yeah.
kind of like hearing the valid points from several different people, sort of like taking some time to think about it myself, think about why it made sense, and then just top blasting the shit out of it. And then, like, yeah, finding very few reasons to sell the fastest horse. There were patches where I was trying to like trade quite safely. So I was just trying to like trade the rotations between Solana and Ethereum. And then obviously, you know, as we know, every time I rotate into Ethereum, it would go badly and I'd end up with less Solana than I had beforehand. So at some point I stopped doing that and just started, you know, holding Solana and, you know, getting stuck into meme coins and yeah, that sort of thing.
Nice, nice. I think you outlined a pretty big piece there, which was that you kind of wanted to still have that rotational trade back into ETH, and then you
Yeah, yeah.
decided to just give that up and just go into the Sol ecosystem, which I think is really cool. I had a question around what you were doing with your Solana, and if you had some stories about aping anything in particular on the Sol chain, or if you had any investment theses on anything within the Solana ecosystem that you were like excited for. How did you find that whole experience?
So yeah, Solana Eco is a funny one. So I was kind of like a lot of the ones that gained like the early notoriety was like, you know, Jito.
Mm,
I'm struggling. There was like, I mean, there was Shadow Token, which like to this day I don't, you know, fully understand. But it kind of felt like they were rehashing like the last cycles, like DeFi, but on Solana,
yeah,
which obviously like makes sense to a degree. But I wasn't particularly interested in it just because it felt like the whole DeFi thing had had its big run.
mm,
Um, and it hadn't really broken through. So I really wasn't like a big bull on like the Solana eco particularly.
yeah,
It felt like there were like very limited options. So there's something like Pyth looked pretty good.
yeah,
Like the kind of like the Link of Soul. But they were always kind of like very, very high FDVs and everything. So it didn't
yeah,
really feel like there was a lot of potential in there. It felt like, yeah, in terms of like, if Solana doesn't work out, these things are going to like, you know, crater 95%, and the upside at like, you know, a multi-billion dollar valuation already is probably like quite limited. So I really was just holding like just straight raw dog and Solana for like a very, very long time. Um,
yeah. That's
and
cool.
then I think it was like Ansem started talking about Bonk,
Yeah,
and the meme coins, and then so I was kind of like tracking the meme coins for a while, and it was very, very like muted, like in the sort of like the Myro days. I was seeing all these coins that just kind of looked, you know, like Myro's. It's kind of got like that sort of Solana gradient background with like a pretty
yeah,
poorly drawn or created like picture of a dog, and like the tokens weren't doing anything for a long time. So I was kind of like watching it, but it didn't really seem like it was going anywhere. And then obviously like Bonk. I'm not sure if something was before Bonk, but at least for me, Bonk was the first one that I saw, which was just completely like melting faces.
yeah,
And I think it was just like the sheer cope of like, you know, watching people who would just like cope is such a beautiful like well. Like you like people have two very different reactions to like other people doing really well and not doing very well. It's like some people get upset and like sort of disconnect. Um, or you can like see other people's success and like use your cope to like fuel like motivation to try new things and just like dive in. And like I think that's like at least for me, I decided to just like dive in. I was just like, oh, like I don't really understand it very much. I'm not like a huge believer in it, but like the token's fucking ripping. I'm just gonna buy a little bit so I feel like emotionally invested in this, and I'll sort of like learn more about like, you know, like the meme coin space on Solana because maybe there's something here. So
yeah.
I just like, yeah, top blasted a bit of bonk, and it just like I think this was probably like someone else's 10x that I'd bought. And then it just kind of like ripped into the stratosphere and like, you know, pulled another I don't know, maybe it ended up being like a 20x on top of that. So yeah, I made like a small-ish bag on the bonk.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then that sort of like rolled into dog with hat. So that was kind of like just what, um, yeah, warmed up the engine for like Solana meme coins. Like once I was in there with Bonk, and I was kind of like, you get that high of, making several multiples. And obviously got like a lot more allocated in Solana meme coins than I would have without like hitting a win in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just bought like a bunch of random shit that looked good. I remember like Block Rays was talking about Dog with Hat, and I don't know, it just like hit something inside of me where I just like saw it was like, I don't know, this is just like, I can't like put my finger on what it was, but it just like it felt like it made so much sense from like a mimetic point of view.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I bought like some with, I think it was like 800K market cap. Um,
Whiff at 800K market cap.
yeah, so I had
Whoa.
like 1.25 million with at 800K.
Whoa.
Um, and I think I put like a 12x on that, and I thought like, all right, that's about as much as I got from Bonk in that sort of thing. And the chart was looking like very strongly like it was popping.
Yeah.
So I sold all except for like 100,000 with. Um, and it ended up like cratered pretty hard. Like it went down, I think it was like 80%.
Yeah.
So I went to bed safe and sound, had like a great night's sleep, and then I woke up to Ansem like fucking shilling it on the timeline, and it was up like, it was like in the process of ripping, 20x off the lows, and I was like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna buy the Pico top now. Like I had fucking like too much of this. Like I'll just hold what I have. I'll just have like my coat bag, and we'll see where this will go. Um, so yeah, I had like my relatively measly whiff bag all the way up until like post Binance listing and everything. So it was kind of like one of those where like I would like to be like frustrated that I didn't hold like Block Rays did and
Yeah.
become like, the darling of CT. But at the same time, I think if I held that much, I probably just would have like sold way too early, and at least like I had my coat bag that, I could hold to pretty substantial profits. So
Yeah. I,
um
yeah. I think the fact that you made money, had a moon bag, and then held it to the obscene levels of market capitalization that this dog with hat token got to was
yeah.
really impressive. So I actually, even though you may have sold in your opinion too early, I think out of everyone else that's probably touched this coin, you've probably come out of it really good, which is good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely happy with how it went. It's just kind of, it's one of those things where you punch the numbers into the calculator at the Pico top, and you think, damn, man, I could have done X, Y, and Z with this, but that's we've all been there. It was like the pain app, which shows your wallet holdings and how much you fumble. I can't remember the name of it now, but yeah, it is, it's painful to look back at how much you could have had initially, but after you've bought and hold and sold things too early, you can't be too upset with yeah, your performances. There's always another crazy runner that goes a Gorillion X.
Yeah, can't be resting too much on it. Yeah. I find it interesting that you had the like energy and confidence to like start gambling on things like Bonk and Whiff, especially at such early market caps. Um, how soon was this after you were collectively now positioned in Sol? Was this like weeks had passed and you're like, all right, I got all this Sol here now. I'm going to start spending it in the ecosystem? Or were you like, no, I believe in Sol. I think it's going to go up a lot, and I'm just going to just speculate a little bit here. The reason why I say that is because I don't think too many people were doing this at that period of time. I still think it was very
Yeah,
contrarian
yeah.
to buy things that didn't have any value after FTX was like less than 12 months ago from that point in time, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I remember when I was buying, it was still like very, very heavily faded. Like Ansom's replies, I mean, it's kind of just like the standard, really. But he was getting like so much hate for, like, oh, why are you shilling meme coins, and like, how could you even mention this? And it must have been like, a relatively substantial market cap by that point. So it's like kind of like fair game these days, considering how far we've come. But it was like very, very heavily faded. And like I think previous cycles, even like I thought sort of like meme coins were a little bit like scammy, and if you're shilling them, you're a bit of a grifter kind of thing. But
Yeah.
like I don't know, I don't know what changed my thought process on it was, but it was kind of like if you can't beat them, then join them. I mean, like at the end of the day, um, like all these people are making X amount of money. Like the whole kind of point of all this financial speculation is to make more money. So um, yeah, I mean, I thought it felt like I held my Solana bag for a long time, but I'm just looking at the chart and I'm seeing where I bought and where like whiff came out. So man, I thought I was holding for like a few months at least, but it looks like I barely made it a couple of weeks. So um, I guess I was, reverted to my old days of like as soon as I have like a real currency like Bitcoin, I just instantly spend it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely didn't go in like massive size in the early days. But yeah, I think it was literally just like a few weeks. I think I just sort of, I think I started with like $800. I just sort of, chucked in some change to give it a go. And
Yeah.
yeah, I never thought like December 2023, and then we'd be here in the early days of 2025 and only really having just recently seen the peak of just an absolutely insane meme coin run. I never in a million years thought it would last as long as it has, and maybe it's still not done yet, but yeah, it's been a crazy, crazy year for meme coins.
Yeah. Were you surprised at all by the fact that it was kind of memes that everyone all of a sudden wanted to speculate on?
Um, like, I was maybe surprised initially. I mean, just in terms of like some of the stuff that was like running like crazy and that people were buying. But I think like what kept me in the meme coin space and like believing in its longevity was just like the sheer fact of like, what else would you buy? Um, and I mean, I thought that for a long, long time. It's just like they've done like crazy, crazy multiples. So I did obviously have phases where, it peaked and, coins were having like insane drawdowns. And then obviously they'd like turn around again. But, at least in the early days, I thought like each one of those um, peaks might be like the death of meme coins. But I think like what kept me like holding or, buying more at the lows was just like a realization like where else are people going to like park their money? Because it was kind of like memes were really the hot narrative for just like
Yeah.
such a long period of time. Like Ethereum and Ethereum DeFi were completely dead in the water. Every pump was just like, full retracing and getting just like aggressively sold off into. Like L1s had like, a pretty decent run there for a while. Like I had a bit of fun trading like Say, and there was obviously like the Say Sui debate and that sort of thing. The AI coin, like Tau, had a bit of a run. So like obviously there was like other places where people could allocate their funds, but there was just like nothing that had anywhere near like the longevity of memes did. And I think it really benefited from being like one of the main first hot narratives to come out of the bull market, like dating back to like Pepe.
Yeah.
Um, so it wasn't like it was just Solana meme coins. It was like Pepe had just like minted people millionaires out of nowhere. So yeah, I guess like at least for me, it became just like an understanding that this was like a very, very durable narrative. And unless there was like some, really fundamental change, or there was like another sector that, ripped as hard as memes were for longer than like, a month or so, it just made me think like, it's probably not going to really cycle anywhere else, at least for like a lot longer, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you made about, I guess, memes being it because there wasn't too much else out there to really get excited about, or at least tangible enough for everyone to sort of understand. Were you like scouring many like crypto opportunities before the meme coins popped off? Were you like trying to find new like setups or investments to make, or were you sort of chilling, waiting, and then all of a sudden when you see memes popping off, you're like, well, I reckon this has to be like it because this makes sense to me. Nothing else out there really interests me, and therefore I can have some fun with these memes.
Yeah, I mean, I never really sort of dug that deeply into it. I mean,
Yeah,
like maybe to um, benefit or the detriment of it, but like I feel like I'm a relatively sort of lazy investor in the sense that I've no, I'm obviously like very interested in it, and I do research into projects a lot myself.
yeah,
I wasn't really finding anything I found particularly interesting. And I think part of why I wasn't really digging that deeply into like other options or other sectors was because of like the mistakes I'd made in the last cycle where like with CBDCs, like there was some like buzz in the media about them or in like traditional finance circles about like CBDCs. And I thought I was basically like picking with Quant, I was trying to like basically pick the narrative before it became the narrative.
yeah. I see what you mean.
Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, so the mistake I made with that was just like the insane opportunity cost with being too early to something.
yeah,
Um, or worst case, it did obviously have a run, but the worst case is the narrative doesn't really play out at all. Um, so then you're either like sort of stuck in underperforming bags, and what happened last cycle is I was kind of like obviously coping about other sectors that ran that I'd missed. And so, like, one of the key changes in my strategy was, and I think Hasaka put it quite well himself in some tweets around like when WIF was going on. But I think it's like a very valid point is like he'd rather be um, like I can't remember the exact thing he said, but he'd rather like catch the last bit of the cycle than be too early and be stuck in like bags that are basically like underperforming
yeah,
and the opportunity cost associated with that. So it was kind of like for me, it was like before meme coins, I saw Solana running. So I obviously talked about how I top blasted or what felt like top blasting Solana.
the Solana. Yeah,
And that was like the price action is obviously proving that this is like a very, very strong narrative. I thought like, the alternate L1 Ethereum killer narrative of, last cycle, I thought was pretty dead and buried.
yeah,
And the Solana price action made me have to face the fact that, okay, so L1 still have a place in the ecosystem, and it felt very, very much like the warming up of what was going to be, yeah, the narrative of the cycle or a very, very strong narrative, which is why I bought some stuff like Say.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, it was basically just like, yeah, my strategy for this cycle has basically just been trying to be plugged into the intelligent, um, smart money on CT
yeah,
and listening to what they're saying, and then thinking for yourself, watching the charts, and then recognizing, yeah, trying to recognize like the start of not necessarily like the start of a wave, but recognizing when a wave, like a narrative wave is forming, and just trying to like um, be late early rather than early late or late late.
yeah. I think it's quite tough for me anyway, to be in that situation where you kind of buy something and then it's not moving, and then the market clearly shows where the money's flowing to, uh, and why it's there, to sort of capitalize on that opportunity. Yeah, speaking of markets, um, we've obviously had a lot of meme coin success, things that have popped up to like billion-dollar valuations overnight. We've also had AI in there as well. Where do you currently see markets heading, and what are your like overall thoughts about where we are in the cycle, and yeah, if there's anything further that you're bullish on?
Yeah, well, this is the golden question. I don't think it's. I really don't think it's been as difficult to call now as it has been ever throughout the rest of the cycle. Because you'd get. I think the thing that's very interesting to me is that so from like sort of December 2023 when meme coins started to heat up on Solana.
Yeah,
So we've obviously had like intra-cycle tops. So like sort of, the start of Q2 2024 was obviously like a big change. Everything obviously got nuked very hard,
yeah,
but the difference was that like, throughout these peaks, once it stabilized a little bit, memes would always come back basically.
yeah,
And it feels to me for the first time all cycle that it's more than like a 70% correction that we're going to bounce out of.
yeah,
I mean, I feel like it's very hard to call tops on memes, like the cycle top on memes, because of just like how, obviously incredibly resilient and anti-fragile they have been.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I don't really want to like, it's very hard to say, but it does feel like, at least in the pit of my stomach. I mean, when I saw there was like that hick streamer, the dude who like crashed his Lambo, and then like the Hawk Tour meme coin were being launched. Um, or like I think it was like Jack Doherty, I think his name was, but he was starting talking about like um, Solana meme coins, and then there was like the Hawk Tour coin, and every bone in my body was just like screaming, like this is a top, this is a top, get the fuck out. Um, and yeah, I think I actually did. I managed to sell off a little bit. I mostly drew down a lot of it since then, just because I sold off my bag, but I didn't. It's very hard to sell all of your bag at the pico top, but
yeah,
that's another story anyway. But it does feel like the way memes have been acting and how they've been such a constant throughout the entire cycle,
yeah,
that it is making me very wary and very cautious of um, where the rest of this cycle is going, because I
yeah,
feel like this is the first time in ages where I'm like, I don't really have any confidence in meme coins. I mean, obviously, there's going to be, like the odd coin, like we have been seeing. Like we've got like, like some random Kanye coin. We've got like fucking Central African Republics pumped to like 600 million. Like who knows where the fuck that came from? Like Test Token from Binance. Your Trump and Melania. Um, so it's like, I don't think meme coins are anywhere. Well, there's obviously life in them still. Like, there's going to be coins that run extremely hard. I don't think that's going to change for, quite a long time until prices, if they do go down a lot further, till they sort of hit that point. But I think as we've been saying, it's just like everything's just been bleeding dry, and it's just kind of like the hot one or two tokens of the week. Um, have been running and just suctioning up all the liquidity. And it does kind of feel like, to put like a mental picture on it, like the euthanasia cycle, where it's like
yeah,
we've only got enough gas left in the tank to pump like one thing at a time. And I think Trump is, like top signals to an extent, like the concept of them is in a way silly. But the fact that you've got like the United States president um, launching his own meme coin and then following up with his wife, like not just as a top signal, but just like as a liquidity drain and as just like a marker of like the balance of risk reward is like how much crazier can it get? How much frothier can it get?
yeah,
And yeah, I'm finding it very hard to as someone that like saw the top of like NFTs and rode them down a fair amount and saw like the hallmarks of like a popped golden narrative, I think I'm, like I've still got my remaining bags that I've obviously, drawn down like 95% from the top. So I think I'm just going to like hold the rest of those. They're not like a hugely significant part of my portfolio at this point. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm having a very hard time seeing how, like obviously memes can have like a huge pump and they'll, because they've drawn down so much, they can have a huge pump and, pull another 10x or whatever. But I do think, yeah, each if it does continue pumping, I think each pump is going to be more and more muted until, yeah, it's just going to be the odd one here or there running. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just kind of, it does feel like the market dynamics that we've enjoyed for so long have drastically changed. Yeah, we've got like the Solana chart is looking very ugly. Like it kind of like gives me reminders of the Bitcoin top from last cycle, like the traditional double top. So that's looking ugly. It's looking like a swing failure pattern.
Yeah.
Huge news on the Trump, which is also very, very frothy. I saw someone like refer to it as like an artificial pump just based on like how huge the Trump coin was, and people were aping Solana to be able to buy that, which I think is very valid.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's at a real crossroads. I mean, like it would make sense if we were sort of like near the lows here, especially after like such a huge liquidation event where people got, people were quoting sort of like 10 billion wiped out. So yeah, I mean, looking at like the data and like the post-halving cycle data and like some of those charts that are thrown around, that part of me kind of like looks at those and thinks like another leg up would make sense. And I'm not like ruling that out. I think I'm maybe probably still leaning slightly in favor of there being, like one more leg left in us. But yeah, like obviously, like I don't really have anything I can sort of like say in black and white other than just like my experience in previous cycles. But it does feel like the wealth creation that has happened this cycle has been so immense, even though it's been very isolated. And um, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Well, I would be surprised to an extent, but yeah, there's definitely something inside me saying that even if it's not the top, the risk to reward is, changed drastically, um, to the point where, yeah, either playing defensive or if you've taken stables out of the system, also you've taken like money into stables or into your bank account, you probably don't want to be putting that back in
Yeah.
unless you get like a massive, yeah, change in the landscape or, yeah, something like that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of yapping on, but it kind of feels like the thing with some of the best traders I see is they have a very, very strong opinion until they're presented with like evidence to the contrary,
Yeah.
or the charts change in a way that's, makes they appear more bullish, or they change their structure to an extent where you can be bullish again. And I think that's just kind of where I am right now. It's just like I'm just kind of like, in defensive mode. I'm happy to sit out the market if it runs a little bit. That's great because obviously like what I have left is going up, but I really have no desire to be looking to buy this dip, or anything like that. And yeah,
Yeah.
I guess we'll just waiting for the market to prove me wrong and just like, ride the tail of the next wave up if that's what happens. And otherwise, it's hard to say, like the president of the United States launching a meme coin. Like I just keep on thinking, like if I look back at that and say, like, you know, I saw that and didn't, take some profits and play more defensive, I think, you're a little bit crazy.
Yeah. I think there's some very valid points as well. I think the risk to reward focus that you had makes a lot of sense, especially considering how hot things have run. Um, I also like the fact that you touched on the president of the United States launching a meme coin, and it's like, how do you really top that? Um, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It kind of feels like this cycle's equivalent of Elon going on SNL in a fucking like, Dogecoin, or shilling Dogecoin on SNL, I think it was.
Yeah.
I can't like, I should chart where that was on the chart, but yeah, like obviously, I'd love to believe like this time is different. Institutions, ETFs buying up lots of Bitcoin, like that is obviously a big, factor that can potentially like drag this cycle out of its previous, kind of like global frothiness signals. But yeah, look, it's a big if. I'd love to believe it's this time is different, and maybe it is. But yeah, if you see some of the things that have been happening, I think it'd be um, you know an incredibly bullish person to tell you that they're not at least taking some off the table, or playing defensively from here. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I think that's quite wise as well. I think too many people are really talking about that at this sort of stage anyway. Only maybe like a few people that I know, but it makes a lot of sense. Like things have been hot since November 2023. We've had a full year of, not everything, but a lot of, like you said, isolated areas that are sending coins a lot higher,
yeah.
and giving plenty of opportunities there. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like another interesting dynamic of this cycle, and something that there's a trader you probably know. He's a fellow Aussie, Stoic Savage, who's been on just like an insane heater for as long as I've been following this bull market. It feels
Yeah.
like he's, basically hit every rotation. Um, and I kind of like I came to these thoughts on my own anyway, but he's said, kind of like similar opinions in terms of like you look at the value of some of like the altcoins that are already existing in crypto, and you compare them to like some traditional companies, like on the stock market or something, and we've got like, we've got coins that do basically nothing that are comparable to in like huge businesses, that like, generate actual profits.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just kind of like it doesn't really make sense to me, like especially as the market matures and like, Bitcoin's getting bought up by ETFs and the whole space is maturing and that sort of thing. It's we're like no longer sort of like 2017, 2021, like we're not really that early anymore.
Mm.
And as time progresses, we're going to be, less and less early. And I think the days of like your traditional alt season, like not to say that like Bitcoin dominance can't go down to an extent, um, but I think that like the previous cycles, alt seasons, at least how we knew them, I think are like, I don't know if they're not likely, but it's not something you should necessarily be betting on. And like Stoics' opinion is like he thinks like the altcoin markets, or at least like crypto in general, is just going to become a lot more difficult. It's going to become a lot more PvP. And the way that that plays out, in my opinion, is what we've been seeing in alt markets pretty much all cycle, where like in previous alt seasons, like an alt season might be like, pretty much all coins ripping multiples here or there.
Yeah.
Um, but like the alt seasons that we've had are very, very isolated pockets, and coins, can rip to 100 to 1,000x. We've had so many examples of that. We've seen like the P&L screenshots. We've seen like the on-chain data showing like how many people have put like $100 into a coin, and all of a sudden they've got like 8 figures. And for me, that's kind of like a manifestation of like, not manifestation, but like, in order for that to be possible, it means that profits aren't going to be like, circulating elsewhere. And it just kind of feels to me like instead of like the rising tides lift all ships kind of thesis, it's now just become like hyper PvP mode in isolated areas where the opportunity is extremely large, but at the cost of having to be selective.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, just in terms of like pure wealth creation, wealth generation, it feels like we're kind of like on a similar level to what I've seen in previous cycles. Um, where like obviously you've got some people who are down bad and really upset about like how they've performed this cycle, and on the other hand you've got like a dude's mate who downloaded Phantom, bought you know $200 of peanut, and now he's like retired a week later. Like
Yeah.
it's hard for me to like sort of put into words, but it just feels like that's kind of like the trade-offs that we have, and that's kind of why I'm leaning towards not having like a traditional alt season.
Mm.
I mean, I'd be surprised if we didn't have some to some extent to the point where Bitcoin dominance does go down, but coupled with like ETFs buying Bitcoin in such huge quantities, Saylor putting on like the turbo bid. Yeah, I just think like, at least my opinion, which seems to be, you know, pretty generally like laughed at by most people on crypto Twitter, is that the alt seasons of past, I don't think are likely to happen. I think this is just like the current era's manifestation of what an alt season's going to be. And yeah, I think that likely continues going forwards, but time will tell.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think the highlighting of the fact that it is isolated, hyper PvP in isolated areas is very evident to see. I think I would have seen anywhere between 50 coins on Solana all run to $1 billion, whereas AVAX probably didn't have one that did it, and I think
Yeah, yeah.
that's the trade-off. It would be interesting to see what happens if we do get a Bitcoin dominance drop, and I do think it's quite interesting that we haven't had a significant correction on the Bitcoin dominance yet. We've had examples of where coins have gone to like quite large market caps on Solana as if there was, you know, really good opportunities there at that period of time. So, yeah. Do you see an example? Because I know you said that we probably won't get an alt season similar to last time. Do you see an example where the Bitcoin dominance drops off, and rather than we get the hyper vertical alt season that we got last cycle, do you see an example where we could have a little bit more of a mature market and things that, not to use the disgusting word of utility, but do you see an example where they might be sought after as revenue generating, like businesses to hold long term?
Um, I struggle with it because I mean, maybe to hold long term. I mean, it depends on like your time horizon, I suppose. But I kind of feel to an extent it's kind of like a symptom of the last season's coins where the meta was just like the low float, insanely high FDV model,
Mm,
where we do have like, obviously good projects that have been built on that sort of model. Um, but it just becomes like, I mean, I think as we've seen this cycle, it becomes like very unattractive to buy that sort of token because, like, yeah, maybe like they could be undervalued at, like say $5 billion. Like, what's the upside target for that at this point in the cycle? I mean, like, especially if there's like massive unlocks coming all the time, I think like it just becomes very difficult to see that as like an attractive investment, especially if you're like someone who can allocate large sums of money. Because it seems like the meta's just shifted from, instead of like, now that retail doesn't want to buy these coins, there's not really like, any incentive for other people to buy these coins. Because if you have like the capital to invest large sums of money in like utility plays or something that you have long-term belief in, these are the guys who are like sitting around the cap table. They're like the seed investors
yeah.
who have the connections and the capital to get in, where they take on basically none of the risk. And instead of being the ones getting dumped on, you're the ones that are getting the unlocks, and you're dumping on like, even if there's no one to dump on, I mean, they launch at such incredibly high valuations that you have such a long runway to just like offload your vested tokens for such a long period of time. I mean, um, I think that's why like something like Hype's doing so well. I mean, the way that they launched, I think, kind of just proves that the tokenomics of the previous cycle are just so incredibly unattractive and broken that um, like it's just not interesting to buy into. Like, Hype is one of the first sort of new serious coins. I mean, it's not necessarily utility,
Mm.
if you would use that word. But yeah, outside of like the meme coin space, it's kind of it just shows like what can be done if projects aren't launched in such like an extractive manner. So at least like for me, um, there's not really, which is why I feel like it's very confusing because I feel like I don't know what to buy at this point in the cycle. Like I have no interest in buying like utility coins of past cycles. Meme coins don't look interesting to me.
Mm.
Like AI, I think is still a very interesting narrative. I wouldn't fade that, but like the cycle that we've had of AI coins that have run really hard with like the Chat GPT wrappers,
Yeah.
which isn't like like an interesting play or interesting exposure to AI. So I think what might carry on like that you know, serious token play would be something in the AI space. If there's like a vertical with crypto that actually makes sense beyond like, a half-assed like ChatGPT wrapper, I can see that being like very interesting. But at the moment, this kind of like Tau, um, I don't like sort of know the ins and outs of that. But like that's one I'm sort of keeping an eye on because it's, like an actual sort of AI play. But outside of that, like I can't really think of any other sectors that are sort of like particularly investable outside of like the classic L1s because they've seen the success of those. Again, why Hype's doing so well, but like outside of like competitors to Ethereum and that sort of thing, the L1 trade and like maybe something that could like come to the horizon, the AI circle. I'm struggling to see anything that sort of interests me as sort of like a long-term hold personally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. What would you feel like, apart from the AI comment that you just made, was there anything else that you feel like you would kind of need to see to feel that level of conviction in the long term, given the current market conditions? And it might not be anything, actually. You might not know what you need to see to be able to get bullish again, at least on the short term. But yeah, keen to hear your thoughts if you've kind of pictured the thing that you really want to invest in, but it just isn't there yet.
Yeah, like Hype. I mean, Hype is still probably basically really the only token I'm kind of interested in at the moment.
Yeah.
And even with Hype, I think it's been a bit of a victim of the market conditions. I mean, it's held up incredibly well because of like how the tokenomics work. In terms of like a lot of people are actually using the platform. So they're making a lot of revenue, which is going back into buying the token.
Yeah.
But we can still like see like even in Hype, which has really been like the main runner for quite a long time now, even after its top in like 35, it's been stuck in this range, and it's been really struggling to get out of it. And I think that's like says a lot about where we are in market conditions at the moment, where even the strongest, fastest horse is struggling to really make an impact at this point in time.
Yeah.
And like I still own some Hype, but it does worry me a bit because it kind of feels like because I don't feel like there's anything really that interesting to buy, it kind of makes me feel like it makes more sense for markets to go lower before they go higher again. And then we
Mm.
can kind of see, um, then it becomes more attractive to kind of buy things that appear undervalued
Yeah.
or you think might be a beneficiary when, the cycle sort of rotates upwards. I mean, like a bear market, you're not going to go, relentlessly down in a straight line. So it's still like worth keeping an eye out for um, to things to pick up on the bounce, even if it's short term. If you're like bearish on a fairly longer time frame, but yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of it for me. Is like I think markets kind of need to go lower to become attractive again.
Yeah.
Bitcoin still looks great, but that's just because it's being turbo bid by trillionaires.
Mm.
Um, And obviously, like art altcoins have been smashed pretty badly. I mean, meme coins especially, obviously, but um, yeah, it's yeah, I'm just not sure what's next. I'm just, I guess it's just a case of like keeping an eye out to see if, something starts to run or if a new narrative wave does start to emerge. But yeah, I'm not really seeing it at the moment.
Yeah, I think
I
it
hate to
takes a.
be
No, you go. Sorry.
I hate to be, no one likes the bear in the room, but like I want to be bullish. Like I still own coins and everything, but um, yeah, it's just like I said, I don't really. It's hard to see what's like appealing to buy at the moment.
Yeah, I appreciate the honesty as well because I think sometimes sitting on your hands and waiting is actually like a really hard position to take.
Yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, props to you to be able to do that and then put yourself in that position to ape or to allocate to whatever is going to be the next hot ball of money narrative. Maybe it's on Binance Smart Chain now. Yeah, now that we think about it a bit more. But um,
Maybe that's the start. Maybe that's the one.
yeah, no, that's
But
awesome.
yeah, it is like I feel like that's a hallmark of all the best traders. I think like MNGR was like a lot of people's one of their favorite posters for quite a while, and he was just saying like the famous tweet where it was like the correct positioning is almost always
Flat.
flat,
Yeah,
and then yeah, when sort of like free money pops up, all you have to do is reach down and pick it up, and I think that's like a big flaw in my trading from past cycles is the need to feel always allocated.
yeah,
Um, and that's where obviously like TA comes in a little bit because you can figure out what your invalidations are, where good places to buy are, where good places to sell are, and it's just trying to like add that extra string to your bow and appreciating that you don't always need to be allocated, and sometimes like it's okay if you miss like a 20% pump, because if it's going to do like a 2 or a 3x, what's the first 20% pump? It's just like, yeah, I guess that's yeah, just sort of a trying to improve my trading habits, I guess.
yeah. And it's not easy, man. Like I think even the best traders get kind of a little bit hung up on that sort of process because in theory, like when you are in and amongst CT and everyone's vibing and having a really good time, and you've just sat through like drawdown and choppy markets for so long, and now that markets are up, you feel like you're winning. It's like very
Yeah,
hard to put the handbrake on that emotion and be like, you know what you should do, sell. When you're like, you know what, I'm not
exactly.
gonna do
Like
that. I'm like, I'm having a good
their
time.
posts don't get engagement, right? Like, that's why it's very dangerous to listen to CT all the time because everyone wants to be bullish. Like everyone wants the bull post because they get the clicks. Like bear posts probably don't even like come up in your feed most of the time. So like to be at least like even short term bearish or like trying to sell at a opportune time for your own portfolio is like something that you need to have like a strong mindset to be in, right? Because if you're easily swayed and you're consuming too much Twitter every day, you'll just you know as I've done in the past, buy the first dip and the dip keeps dipping and like yeah. Anyway, I think just what I'm trying to do better this cycle is to just try and take big profits sort of indiscriminately on the way up,
Mm,
and not worry too much about like not selling the top or like selling something and watching it go higher and not being too emotionally affected by that because I know how difficult it is to sell on the way down. um, you know it's everyone has a plan until they get like they get kicked in the teeth, and it's very very difficult to sell on the way down. So anyway, I'm sure I'll leave some chips on the table, and I won't sell the top, and it'll probably do another leg higher, but that's fine. I've got like plenty of allocation, and just got to be happy taking profits along the way, and yeah, increasing the bag for the next cycle.
yeah, I
Not that this
think
one's over.
taking profits indiscriminately is really sound advice as well. Um, yeah, which is good. I had a question for you outside of crypto.
Yeah.
Basically, what comes after crypto for you? Would you finally be able to move out of Canberra with your cycle profits?
Mate, I don't know if I don't know if I'm ever making it out the hood. I think I'm Rog from Canberra, mate. Like I think it's become part of my identity. I'm here for better or worse.
I'm here forever.
Um,
Uh,
yeah, but yeah, I don't know, man. Like the missus is always telling me to like diversify, buy some stocks, that sort of thing. Which I'm sure I will do in the future. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm getting old, man. Like the responsibilities are coming in. Like I
mm,
want to sort of like have a place to live, stop renting. Have a family and that sort of thing.
all that
So
fun stuff. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I don't know if there'll ever be a life after crypto. To be honest, I think I'll always still have a toe in the water.
Yeah.
Um, because like, the classic meme when someone's like, oh yeah, this is it for me. I'm quitting crypto. I'm shutting down my account. And then you get like 27 replies of people be like, all right, mate, see you tomorrow. And then they're just there tomorrow. Like, I mean, like, I think crypto's just got that hold. I mean, like, until it becomes like as mature as like the stock market where, people are getting excited over, like a 3% gain or something like that. I can't see it ever not being interesting. And it's like this is kind of like what I've sort of like it's kind of like my real intro into investing, right? So it's kind of
Yeah.
like it feels like this is my niche. Like I know stocks and cryptos like comparable, um, but it feels like this is kind of my niche in crypto. I've spent so many like hours of my life as a cave goblin in my little, like space center with my 3 screens set up across, the desk and everything, staring into the abyss. That it's like, yeah, it's hard to see myself really pivoting from that. Um, yeah, just kind of
Yeah.
like wanting to, when you spend so much hours and like I'm obviously, no expert, but definitely learned a lot and gained instincts and it kind of feels like more sense to me to just continue with that, especially if it gets bigger and bigger. I mean, um, yeah, I'd rather just become a master of one thing than uh, okay at say like 50 different things. I feel like
Yeah.
it's much more profitable or much more, yeah, smart to just sort of master the one trade that is, you're good at.
Yeah, I think you highlighted the fact, obviously going back to when you were talking about taking profits indiscriminately. I think by the sounds of it, once you build up a really, really healthy relationship with crypto and you're more happy to like trade these as cycles and get very accustomed to taking lots of profit on the way up so that you can be positioned for next opportunities. I feel like you're going to be able to be in a really good position more so than most to be able to navigate a lot of these markets, um, and help you get into that position where you can you know get the house within the Canberra asylum, um, and
Exactly.
then have the
Gotta own
family
the
and
asylum.
stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Gotta
and
own the asylum and be a patient.
yeah. I'd
But yeah, I mean,
say,
like,
yeah, you go.
it's a skill, right? Like,
Mm,
it's a skill to be able to sell and be content with that. And it's something that you know took a long time for me to learn. It took 2 full cycles of round tripping, and I'm still not very good at it. But yeah, like I'm just trying to be more ruthless and not become like emotionally attached to my bags, which is like regrettably like sold a lot of like my pudgy assets. Yeah, sold like a lot of the pengu that I was allocated and stuff like that.
yeah,
Um, which I guess in this instance it's worked out quite well, at least for now, until the pudgy pump rips to 100 ETH. I'd love to see that, but yeah, it's yeah, very difficult still to learn, and it's a mindset that you need to practice, and yeah, being content with yourself, and um, yeah, not allowing yourself to be upset or like beat yourself up over like not juicing an extra 20% out of it, 40%, 50%, and just sort of recognize um, the gains that you've had are, pretty solid and to be happy with them.
Yeah. It's because you can always look across to someone else's P&L card and just feel like you're going absolutely terrible.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
think
There's always
just
someone on there doing better than you.
yeah. So that's why you got to bag hold. You got to bag hold all the way
You
down.
got a bag hold. I mean, it says a lot that, if I just bag hold that one, whiff bag the entire time and just turn my brain off like all the people with, insane P&L screenshots were, then, maybe I'd be a lot happier than my current strategy. But hey, we've all got our own methods.
Yeah, I can't believe you're an idiot for being disciplined and taking profits on the way up, man. That's
I'm embarrassed, really.
I can't believe you felt comfortable to talk about this on the pod, but
I know.
here you are.
I'll be begging you to delete it once it goes live, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll get that edited out. Did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about or touch on that you feel that you've kind of maybe learnt along the way in terms of your lessons? I know that you kind of talked through a lot of the things from previous cycles that you've learnt and sort of applied into this cycle, but was there anything else that you wanted to add and generally talk about?
Um, I think I probably um, said most of them. I think I mean, I touched on a little bit, but I think like with copy trading people on CT,
Mm,
um, like another thing that I've learned this cycle is that like the thing that all of these like big traders that have reached fame for like being super successful, having incredible calls, is the one thing they all have in common is they come to their own conclusions, right? Like they're
yeah.
not out there copy trading other people because otherwise they wouldn't have been the outlier where they experienced the success that they had and got into that position where, they were sort of like a coal, to put it that way. But like, the ones that actually know what they're doing and, aren't just laughing at everything. But I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is that I feel like a lot of my instincts this cycle, um, like I've had a lot of like the correct instincts, but the thing that I've done poorly was my execution
Mm,
on my own like opinion and being influenced by some of the opinions like on Twitter, for example. I mean, like there are obviously like, a lot of really intelligent people on Twitter, and it's like, in some respects important to like, well, useful to listen to them. But I think you do need to believe in yourself, and it takes like a while, obviously, to build up the experience and spend the hours looking at charts. But I do think the only way, or the best way to learn and improve as a trader is to trust your own instincts, trust your own process. There's so many different ways to trade. There's no like one right way to trade. There's a million different indicators you can use. The important thing is to like figure out what works for you. And then when you found that, like back yourself to actually like follow through on your instincts and your opinions and your thoughts. Because I know I've been a lot more successful ever since doing that, and it's not easy to do. Like it's difficult, like being out there on your own and sort of being alone and being the counter opinion to what everyone's saying, right? But sometimes like that's that's the right opinion and you need to do that, and even if you're wrong, they're the ones you learn the most from. So I guess just that's it. It's just like, put in the hours, figure out your own system, and back yourself enough to make your own decisions and make your own calls. And especially in the early days, you'll be wrong more times than you're right, but it's really the only sustainable way, unless you hit lucky on like, peanut or something insane like that. It's really the only way for sort of like consistent, sustainable, um, I guess, portfolio um,
growth.
trading style trading. Yeah, portfolio growth. Yeah, exactly. It's just like, at least for me, it's, like incremental gains and just making more right decisions than wrong decisions and managing your risk. And I know I've certainly probably underperformed a lot of people that just like full ported some fucking random meme coin and made like $20 million, and like, I can accept that. But yeah, this is at least for me, this is what works for me. And yeah, I think that's last thoughts from me.
Yeah, no, I really like it, and I think the one about believing in your own confidence or building up your own confidence and having your own conviction uh, on investments or trade ideas and stuff like that. I think that's one of the coolest things about this space is that because there's an element of there's not many people that really know what they're doing here, so you can
Yeah,
kind of afford that ability to go about it on your own and develop your
yeah,
own
exactly.
management
So
principles.
new and so like rapidly changing. I mean, there's
Yeah,
never been a better industry to, yeah, make your own decisions.
yeah, which is yeah, it's something I agree in as well because it's what we're here to do. You know, make some good investment decisions. Hopefully, few bad ones, and yeah, uh, move to Canberra.
Exactly. This is going to be the crypto capital of Australia. They just don't see it yet.
Yeah. For all we know, you could be a Fed in the sense that you are
It's,
like high up at the ATO and you're absolutely just out here trying to figure out who's legit, who's bypassing a lot of the laws, you know.
I wouldn't blame you. I mean, like, every second person in Canberra is some sort of, government entity. So, it's not impossible, eh?
It's not impossible. It's not impossible. But Smoothie, it was a pleasure to have you on and have you talk about everything that you've mentioned. I definitely think the fact that you had the balls to go to bonk and then rotate some of that into whiff at 800k is extremely impressive considering I thought of the idea of buying Solana at that period of time was still obscene. And I really like the fact that you talked on the fact that you only wanted to stick to ETH for emotional reasons, and as you saw the winner being bid, I think it was awesome that you decided to pivot and then go to Solana and then make it work for you and apply risk management practices on the way up and secure your profits as well. So, um, yeah, thank you
Thanks
very
so
much
much,
for
bro.
coming on.
I
It was
appreciate
a
that.
pleasure. Yeah, awesome.
Great interview. Loved the chat.
Thanks, man. We'll have to add some of the the cuts that we had at the start for the banter as well.
Yeah, we can have like one of the shorts on the Twitter account, or like, the behind the scenes footage, director's cut.
The behind the scenes footage of putting up the background photo as we
We've got to
talk
include
through.
that somewhere. I feel like that was the best content of the night almost.
Yeah, we'll scrap the whole thing. We'll just have that for 10 minutes, just talking about
Yeah,
how good it
that'll
was.
be it. Best trader I know, and we just talk about like fucking making sure you've got a really beautiful photo of Parliament House. Like that's what we really need.
Yeah, the first one was the best one, so I think that's a great win. You know that it
Yeah,
came out well.
absolutely nailed it. You got an eye for art.
For Canberra art for the
And
Parliament
art,
House.
it's a massive praise. It doesn't get higher than that.
Yeah. But if you are watching this on YouTube in the replay, which of course is what we're doing because we didn't go live due to my patchy internet, of which I'll need to get fixed. If you could like and subscribe, that'd be fantastic. And if you've listened this far, I appreciate you guys listening. We'll have some links for you to follow Smoothie. He is a very nice man, very approachable, and with his experience trading these markets, I reckon there's more to learn from Smoothie. So we'll have to get you on in the future again, I think.
I'd love to, bro. Until then,
Awesome. Awesome. Have a good night, man. We'll talk to you soon.
ja.
Bye.
Thank you, bro. See ya.